Well, welcome to the World Today. Apologies for starting a little late, but let's get right into it. Of course, globally, we all know what's happening in the Middle East as the tensions rise and those attacks over Iran by the United States and Israel and retaliatory attacks by Iran as well. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has called on the international community to work hard to de-escalate the conflict in Iran and stop it from spreading into the wider region. It comes after the United States and Israel launched a joint strike on Saturday, with U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowing to destroy Iran's missiles. In response, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has said that widespread missile and drone attacks against Israel were underway. U.S. bases were also reportedly targeted in the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Iraq, and Kuwait, with reports earlier today saying that some buildings, both commercial and residential, were hit in Dubai. We'll get more on that as we go on the program. But then the 3 U.S. jet fighters were mistakenly shot down in Kuwait. U.S. Central Command confirmed this. The 6 crew safely ejected from the F-155 are in stable condition during active combat that included attacks from Iranian aircraft, ballistic missiles and drones. The U.S. Air Force fighter jets were mistakenly shot down by Kuwaiti air defenses. The U.S. says it's grateful for the efforts of the Kuwaiti Defense Forces and their support in this ongoing operations. That was the cause, and that the cause of the shooting down is now under investigation. Expectedly, there are various reactions on the ongoing tensions in the Middle East from all over the world, with residents of various countries reacting to this. And some of the ongoing conversations is how this tension in the Middle East is going to affect other countries, including countries here in Africa. There are growing reactions to that situation in Iran, especially the killing of its supreme leader and other major members of the government and the IRGC. This comes after American and Israeli forces carried out strikes on cities across Iran in what the U.S. President Donald Trump has described as major combat operations. Iran has responded with its own airstrikes targeting U.S. bases and assets across the Middle East as part of what it calls Operation Truthful Promise 4. The attacks come after weeks of threats and negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. Amidst growing reactions to the increased sanctions in the Middle East, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu over the weekend expressed deep concern over the issue and called on all parties to exercise maximum restraint and refrain from actions that could intensify hostilities. According to the president, we urge strict adherence to the provisions of the United Nations Charter and the Geneva Convention, particularly taking into cognizance the respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the peaceful settlement of disputes. In the meantime, some Nigerians protested in the streets of Kano in northwest Nigeria, condemning the killing of the Iranian supreme leader and the continued U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran. Some respondents said they believe that the U.S. and Israel will face the consequences of their actions and that they are optimistic that they will reap the results of what they consider an act of wickedness committed against Iran and its leader. Iranian officials have said that the Khamenei's killing would mark a turning point, with the Revolutionary Guard vowing retaliation and declaring that this great crime will not go unpunished. They have announced widespread missile and drone attacks targeting Israel. We're joined on the program by our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Maria Bird. Maria, great to see you today.
Good to see you as well.
Right. The last time we spoke, we talked about, the unfolding situation in the Middle East. Of course, U.S. President Donald Trump then was threatening Iran to attack Iran if it does not de-escalate its nuclear weaponry. And now it has happened, and the attacks, we've seen the result of the attacks. Of course, Israel too joined in this. We have the reports that the Iran supreme leader has been killed in the attacks alongside several other big leaders in Iran. Give us a sense of what's going on now. We were not sure if the U.S. president was going to take that step to attack Iran, but now it did. What happened over the weekend?
Well, many Americans woke up Saturday morning to announcements of a airstrike against Iran, and I think the question was, to your point, we knew that it was potential. I'm not sure if Americans realized that it was imminent. And so I'm not sure if there was an expectation that by Saturday morning they would have woken up to what appeared to be what many are considering, an escalation of the tension between the countries. So the question is, our relationship with Israel obviously has been always been very strong, but increasingly strong with this current administration, with the Trump administration. And so are we collaborating with Israel? And is this the appropriate time and way in which collaboration, I think, was the initial question of many Americans. And so over the weekend, obviously, the news around the attacks, what this meant, I think people are wondering, what does this mean for America? What does this mean for the lives and of especially those Americans that will be on the front lines? And as we know, there have already been announcements of casualties with Americans. The U.S. also has a very close relationship with many Middle East countries. Specifically, many Americans have begun to do business in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. And so that, I think, is a bit of a surprise as well, because many Americans are overseas in the Middle East working. And obviously we know that the air traffic, and we know that many of the airports were shut down in the Middle East over the weekend. And so some of the concerns around that. So I think there's just a lot of questions. Obviously, Congress announced over the weekend they would quickly get back to Washington to put a vote around this. So it's really, I think, a focal point on the president's intentions, what this means for the lives of Americans, and really what this means for our geopolitical strategy moving forward.
Right, and Maria, Iran did promise retaliatory attacks, and we have seen attacks on U.S. bases in the Middle East and other parts of the world. What does this mean? How is America, protecting its assets in that part of the world, knowing full well that Iran did say there will be consequences for attacks on its infrastructure, and perhaps the ultimate prize was the killing of its spiritual supreme leader?
As you mentioned, the assets of America in the Middle East. If we remember back to almost 2 weeks ago, the president was very clear about assets in that region. He also was ensuring that there were, whether it was weaponry, whether it was other types of aircraft vehicles, vessels, by water, by way, of ensuring that there were possibility, if there was an airstrike or any type of tension escalation, that the U.S. would be somewhat prepared. So we know that he started to make measures and steps for that a few weeks back. Now, around the supreme leaders, we know that America has been heavily involved. We look at Venezuela. We now look at what's happened here in Iran. We also look back to several administrations ago, and we think about Al-Qaeda, and some of the forces there, the efforts there around the capture and assassination of Osama bin Laden. So we know the U.S. has been very active geopolitically and around what many might consider dictatorship. And we know that, too, if we look at what has been announced and what many communities across the United States of Iranian Americans have been celebratory about some of this action. And so the question is, even though potentially there could be those who are from Iran living in America that escaped Iran because of some of the dictator challenges that they felt when they were living there, was this the appropriate move? I think that's what Congress is coming back to vote on, and to see what the powers that the president should have as it relates to declaring war without congressional approval.
Right, Maria, thanks again for your time. We did talk about protests over the death of the supreme leader in Iran, over in South Africa. Congregants at the Alul Bayt Foundation and Association of Shia Muslim Communities gathered in Cape Town to pay their respects to the late Iranian supreme leader. The candles, with candles, Iranian flags, and a book to leave words in, mourners gathered in front of a portrait of the late leader. National coordinator of the group, Syed Haider, said the US and Israel have killed a great leader whose crime was nothing but to resist, to fight for the independence and sovereignty and rights of his own country. Earlier on in Europe, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen also reacted. He called for international community to work hard to de-escalate the tensions in the Middle East. So we're getting more reactions on this, and joining us on the program is Ambassador Joe Keshi, who will expand the conversation for us. Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure joining you.
Right. So what was your immediate reaction to the escalation over the weekend of the tension in the Middle East, considering the U.S. and Israeli involvement in it, and because the U.S. president had threatened to attack Iran if discussions go awry on its nuclear program? And, you know, it was no longer a threat that the weekend. The attacks eventually did happen. So your immediate reaction to this situation?
My immediate reaction was that this is unfortunate. A threat to global peace and security. And the fact that conversations, the talks were still going on. They were supposed to resume the technical discussion today, Monday, I think in Geneva. So it just tells you, and I think as some news outlets have reported, as of yesterday, I don't know about today, as of yesterday, none of the Iranian nuclear sites have been hit. All that has been attacked has been, government institutions, the house of the office and the house of the leadership of Iran. So it just tells you that this is something that has been decided, and the so-called meetings were just to deceive the Iranians, while the Americans and the Israelis were busy preparing what they want to do. I think it's as simple as that, and should be clear to everybody, because everybody who was attending this piece, if you look at the sequence of events, even the Vice President of the United States, who got a report of the event, declared that it was progressing very well and that the conversation was making progress. And this was what those who were involved were saying to the rest of the world. But behind the scene, the leaders in America, President Trump and Netanyahu, were doing something else, preparing for a surprise attack. And that's what has just happened.
Right, and the European Commission President is calling for a de-escalation of the tension in the Middle East. With what has happened so far, you just said that you don't think that any of Iran's nuclear sites were hit, but perhaps the death of Iran's leader is even a more painful situation in the country. What do you think is going to happen in the next couple of days?
Well, look, first of all, I think we all need to agree that there was actually, as of today or yesterday or 2 days ago, while the talks were going on, there were actually no good reasons for this attack. In the first place, I think we all should remember that a deal was made under the Obama administration, which Trump, repudiated and cancelled. Now, that deal was working very well. The International Atomic Energy consistently reported that Iran was abiding by the contents of the agreement. But President Trump, decided to abrogate that deal for two reasons. One, because of Israel, and two, because the deal was made by a man he's very upset with for becoming president before him, and obviously for being black, Barack Obama. And there was, beside those two reasons, they should have given the, look, let's even accept, as somebody said to me yesterday in another conversation, let's even accept that the deal was not too good a deal. The best thing to do was not to cancel that deal, but to revive it and see whether it can be improved upon. But he deliberately canceled it and decided that he needed a new deal that will, of course, have its own signature on it as you know, the Trump signature, as he wants everything to be named after him anyway. So this is why we're in a crisis, because of the personal ego, selfish ambition of two leaders in the world. You know, and listen to what Trump said yesterday. After the first initial bombing, what did he say? He said to the Iranians, I have done what I can do for you. You now have to take your country. For goodness sake, how would that happen? Just killing a few leaders. In Gaza, they virtually eliminated all the leaders, but there are leaders still in Gaza. In Lebanon, they virtually eliminated all the frontline leaders of Hezbollah. But are they not backfighting Hezbollah again? Look, every effort made by the Americans for regime change or by eliminating leaders have never really worked, because more and more, I mean, new leaders emerge to carry out the struggle, whatever they are struggling for.
And, you know, there are concerns that this escalation, or, you know, the tension itself could also have a spillover effect in, you know, a continent like Africa. Do you have these concerns as well?
No, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure how this will affect Africa, except, of course, I sincerely confess, I don't know how oil moves. So if the Iranians block the route where oil passes, I'm trying to remember the name now. Your moon says, you know, strike. No, that would probably be the only way. Of course, if the prices of oil goes up, oil-producing countries like Nigeria would benefit. There's no doubt about that. If the prices of oil go, and I think it's going up to 100, you know, today or so, so we will benefit. But in terms of whether we will get involved, Africa will get involved, and there will be strikes against Africa, no, I don't think that would happen. I think what is happening in the Middle East today is unfortunate. Some countries are getting in. I mean, are being attacked. Not necessarily the country itself, but American facilities in those countries are being attacked. But in the process, you know, some of the rockets are going into the wrong direction and hitting facilities belonging to the country itself, which is why some of these countries are angry and are threatening to join the fray, which is very unfortunate. And, you know, this is why leaders are always enjoined to think through before they take mighty actions, you know, like this. Don't just wake up and say, oh, we have planned enough. We have all the military strength and we can do whatever we like. Yeah. It won't last for, it will last only a few days. It is not lasting for a few days now.
Right. I must thank you for your time. Former Permanent Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Joe Keshi, thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you.
Well, that, of course, is a story that's developing with reactions coming from different parts of the world to this. As the European Union, the European Commission has called for a de-escalation. We will be following the story, tracking it to see what happens over the next couple of hours and indeed the next couple of days. Stay with Channels Television as we follow that story for you. But that's where we end the world today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Joker Rogers.